Hi there, everyone. This is Sai, again with the Crypto Guardians podcast, where we bring you the stories of the people keeping your blockchain safe. Please note, this is not legal, investment, life, or advice of any other kind. So with that, I'd love to introduce our guest for today, Jay. Jay is the founder of Silence Laboratories, a young cybersecurity company based in Singapore. Jay comes from a strong academic background where he spent 7 years doing research on usable authentication, no mean feat. Using his PhD, he spent time leading computer science laboratories at SUTD and NUS Singapore and UIUC in the United States. He's published in reviewed conferences and journals, including ACM Mobicom, IEEE TIFS, ACM WISEC, and IEEE Euro S, and ACM Hot Mobile, ACM Asia CCS, and holds multiple patents. Now Jay is on a path of empowering internet users with the fusion of cryptography and signals. So, wow, that is quite a bit. Jay, you've clearly been busy as an academic. It is truly an honor to have you join us. So with that, I'd love to turn over to you to kind of tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you're working on with Silence Laboratories.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you very much, Sai. Seems to be very exciting. And thanks for that long intro.
Well deserved. That's a
Right.
lot of journals.
Yeah, it's a totally academic to enterprise kind of transition, which I'm loving it, given the freedom and given the problem is solved. Right. So as you said, yeah, we have set up Silence Laboratories, which is a deep tech authentication provider company based in Singapore. What we are doing is we are providing a very developer-focused SDKs and libraries to enable enterprises towards zero trust authentication and authorization. So Silence Laboratories essentially is a cryptographic infrastructure provider and libraries enabler, wherein we are helping enterprise to adopt privacy-preserving compute and decentralized authentication. Some of the buzzwords which you might be listening is MPC, threshold signatures, homomorphic encryption, and all those things. So we are onto those with a very heavy research backing as such.
And so just so the audience can understand this, I mean, even for the security interested audience, MPC, cryptography, there's a lot of very deep things to think about. Let's help us frame the problem you're solving by, what's the challenge? Like, what are the things that, before Science Laboratories, companies were struggling with, and the problem you're trying to attack for them? And then we can get into the intricacies of how you solve it and the cool things you're doing
Right,
at MPC and kind of that area.
right. Yeah. So right after the from the very beginning, the way crypto industry started, particularly, although MPC is getting lots of traction in non-crypto and totally in general Web2 as well. So when we started to design wallets and other solutions and other products, we did not care much about the how users will sign a transaction. We adopted something which was readily available, ECDSA signature, and just use a private key and sign it.
Mm-hmm.
And the wallet took a rush. Many people adopted MetaMask and many other wallets.
Mm-hmm.
But when user adoption grew, some problems popped up. And the problem where I storing my private key in one place in a local browser on a phone, and then storing my seed phrase as well for recovery process.
Mm-hmm.
And that enabled a single point of failure. People started to get frisked. They were kind of typing their seed phrase somewhere, getting frisked, compromised with accounts, private keys just being getting stolen has been getting much more frequent these days.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the spot we are trying to solve, adding element of decentralization so that there's no single point of failure around the key management landscape.
Perfect. No, that makes a ton of sense. It's always the fear of, well, gee, if I have my own key, I can lose it. I can have it stolen. I could put it into a phishing website. Like as your point, there's a bunch of ways for that single point to fail. So now that we kind of understand that, like, tell me, how your implementation of MPC solves that problem.
Right. Okay. So we are approaching this problem from two perspectives. One is cryptographic, which is the MPC stack. And the second one is a layer of proof. And when I say proof, these are cyber physical proof. And what we are trying to mirror here is that when you do a transaction, when you meet a person peer to peer, there is an element of psychological and physical assertion that this person is correct. And that also we have to transform to a digital domain. That's what is proof, meaning for us. So first, let's come to MPC part. MPC is it's not invention of one particular person or a company.
Hmm.
It's coming from very deep academic pedigree and academic contribution.
Hmm.
So we are kind of tweaking the protocols a bit here and there, but following very standard and well battle tested protocols, like Lindell's protocol, DZ19, DD20, and then now lots of traction around DKLS, which we will talk also in much more detail.
Hmm.
So we are adopting those protocols, finding the right fit for our partners, what problems they are solving under different constraints, and then giving them those libraries which will enable them. So wherein very simply what these libraries does is that it will allow you to not put key in one place. Actually, you have shards of the private keys, not literal shards. There is a big confusion in the industry about it,
Hmm.
that whether some secret is actual MPC or not. So that's a different story to talk about in general. But yeah, we are kind of enabling that SDK wherein people can adopt different constructs of MPC plus, and then proof element, like I told. So a couple of examples of proof can be proof of proximity. When I'm trying to sign a transaction through a wallet, which is browser based, if I can check through some parameters that if the phone which is authorizing the transaction and the browser are in the same physical space,
Hmm.
it will be a very good enabler to root out all possibility of remote login attempts or botting scams. And those can be done by using some of the proof library that we have developed at confluence of sensor fusion and signal processing. So yeah, that's our approach to target this problem.
Oh, very cool. That is really the perfect match of, we always talk about market and founder match. So a market that needs these deep academic cryptographic protocols applied to an industrial problem. You really do sound like the perfect guy to, bring that to market. So I'd love to hear more about, how did you decide to make that transition? Because I mean, clearly if you're publishing an ACM, IEEE, like all the ACMs, that's you're quite a prestigious academic, and I know it's a big leap to go from that into industry. What drove you to make that leap, and then how did you go about, starting your company from, the ivory tower, as it were?
Right, yeah. So one thing which I love really about both academia and entrepreneurship is freedom to explore and solve problems. That's common. The
Mhm.
approach is a bit different. Academic is a slow process where you find some very niche case and then solve it by putting lots of effort. In entrepreneurship, you have to find that fit as well, whether it's a commercially viable or not. So that learning was a super important for us. But yeah, the transition happened because we keep on finding multiple vulnerability in multi-factor auth, two-factor auth, and we publish it. But to get it acknowledged and get it adopted, it was quite hard. So
Mhm.
that kind of pushed us to find a very apt problem in this domain. We talked with multiple people, and that there were a couple of Eureka moments that okay, this is the correct problem to solve, and we know some of the tech which can solve it,
Mhm.
and that led to a transition. And luckily, we met right people at right time. Our CTOs and our other team members, and that kind of propelled the whole thing. It's not a lone journey. We
Mhm.
need right people, right time, and lots of things to work together. And that
Yeah.
kinds of work in the beginning, and that's how we started.
Oh, that's a great way to start your journey. And that's so interesting. You mentioned there was a gap between, the implemented protocols you saw and kind of issues with the implementation. Help us understand, like, what's the gaps that you typically find between maybe the theory or like the mathematical proof that exists in
Right.
cryptography and then the implementation in code? Because obviously there always are gaps, but I'd love to hear more about that, particularly from someone who has not only written, I'm sure, papers pointing out those gaps, but also is now building a company to solve all the gaps. So you've literally run the entire spectrum from one end to the other on this problem, which is a great perspective to have.
Right. Yeah, that's a very important question to address. Mm. So, okay, so when you publish paper,
Mhm.
there are lots of kinds of researchers. I have met many. My advisors
Mhm.
span through different spectrums, very independent, allowing advisor to someone who kinds of nurtures very closely.
Mhm.
So in academia, what we have been saying is at times we are not very much aware about the constraints of the problems which a consumer might have or a user or a business enterprise might have. Those constraints are sometimes artificial as well, maybe or maybe not,
Mhm.
depends on the quality of the research. But yeah, based on those assumptions, we kind of enter into a path where we are we keep on reinventing something which is not needed actually, and by the actual business use case. So I can give you a couple of examples. Let's take an example from the MPC domain itself. So when you publish paper, right,
Mhm.
not all MPC protocol will work equally for all the problems. Some will work very nicely for a two-party system, a
Mhm.
wallet, because your assumption on recovery process, your assumption on honest majority or dishonest majority keeps on varying. So one protocol will work very nicely for non-custodial setup. One protocol will very nicely work for custodian companies which are holding assets,
Mhm.
and they have everything on cloud. The moment user phone comes into place, things change a bit, and those constant kinds of create a gap between academia and industry. In general, this is common across sensing, computing, security, and all the industries.
Mhm.
But having said that, I would say yeah, security is much more updated because it's a tug of war between security designers and exploiters. So
Yep.
that academia and industry works very closely, and that is something good to have in this industry as well.
Mhm. No, I've definitely seen that in my career too. It's almost like the academics are like very helpful adversaries, where they're both, poking at your systems, but one, of course, will exploit it. The academics will write a paper about it and kind of
Right.
tell you here how to fix it immediately, which is
There are a
much more
couple of very
helpful.
interesting conference. Yeah, yeah. Couple of very interesting conference. Like Usenix has a conference where they just talk about all the vulnerabilities they can do, like OOT.
Mhm.
We have conference like Real World Crypto, which is happening in next month in Japan, and that keeps industry and academia at a very good pace to each other.
Oh, that's great. We'll have to keep an eye out for that. And that kind of brings us to a good point. Let's talk a little bit about the state of crypto security, current risks, particularly with the issues around, FTX and centralized exchanges. We've heard it's only highlighting the need and the importance of self-custody, which really, I think in the last couple of years really felt like it'd fallen by the wayside. I know I have some dusty Ledger wallet that's 5 years old sitting in my basement somewhere, and that had really kind of fallen out of fashion. And in
Right.
the last year, I've heard nothing but kind of self-custody, all the way through. So help us understand, what do you feel like the state of crypto security is? What are
Mhm.
the big risks? What are the big opportunities right now?
Right. Yeah. So the risk has been always there,
Hmm.
but FTX and all these incidents have propelled it and kind of amplified it. And now people are appreciating it. The main risk, I would probably start from the very approach of the companies. So, crypto industry in general, we believe is very much developer oriented.
Hmm.
They are not user empathetic.
Mm.
It's not user centric or product led yet.
Yep.
If you found a cool tech, you kind of push it that with a belief that it will get adopted. We need many more designers, product designers, and product thinkers in crypto industry, which is totally lacking. All the top leadership and executives in these companies are either very good developers
Hmm.
or they have been in this industry for a bit long. They
Hmm.
are not product trained, and that kinds of lead to a gap in what is being built and what is required. It is important because if you talk about self custody, laser, yeah, it solves the problem, right? You have the keys with you, and it's pretty good.
Yep.
But that can't be used by my grandparents, my uncles, my father, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So that usability gap is there,
Mhm.
and that has to be solved. And the
Okay.
problem started from the very concept of private key and seed phrase being communicated to the user.
Yeah,
Users
that's
would
true.
never ever listen his words. What is private key? What is seed phrase? I don't
Yeah.
care as a user. I need to log in. Just give me a way to log in. I need to click on some SSO or something, and that's done. Everything should be happening in the background, and that should be done correctly. And that's the problem which has to be solved. We have to balance three things, which we believe: usability, security, and empowerment.
Hmm.
Empowerment of the user has been missing lately, but yeah, it's getting amplified, and we are also trying to push in our region as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great
Coming to
point.
the self
Empowerment.
custody, yeah, it's very important. So for empowerment, what we mean here is that a user should be able to move funds from point A to point B without any enterprise blocking them.
Hmm. Oh,
And
that's
if
great.
we're able to
That's
do
the
that through
dream, right? That's
some,
true decentralization.
yeah, if that is possible through some designs, that will lead to true self custody,
Hmm.
where I have total control on all my assets, and that can be enabled. People are working towards it. So there was a custodial kind of setup before. Now all the architectures are shifting towards shared custody, where companies hold some part of the keys and user has one part of the key. That is good. But the problem there is companies can still block the user if
Hmm.
they want. They can stop the transaction. So a couple of partners and businesses which we have been talking, they do are seeing their product going towards more true self custody,
Hmm.
where user has full control. But the main challenge is usability, getting adoption. And that balance is something which won't come directly from a developer community. It
Yeah.
needs it needs thinkers.
Yeah, especially as it expands, I think it's a great point around this where, this really is a developer-centric technology and has been for many, many years. But as the community expands, as you mentioned, it includes our, fathers, mothers, aunts, uncles, people outside of the technology community, really requiring a different level of description and usability to people that are not familiar with terms like, cryptographic key. I know you
And this
probably
should
see that.
not be
Yeah, exactly. Even like explaining NPC to the average person on the street is probably like almost an impossibility. So you probably don't even try. Because I know you primarily provide a service to other companies like wallets or other things. Can you
right.
describe what the common use case is and how, Silence Laboratories technology is able to enable these companies to provide that service to these users and empower them so that, we're not explaining to our family members what, you know,
Right. Mhm.
multi-party computation actually is.
Correct, correct, correct. Yeah. Right. So the reason here is that a user is not a binary user who switches between Web 2 and Web 3. In
Mhm.
the morning, I'm trying to log into Gmail, and in the afternoon, I'm trying to log in from MetaMask or some browser, and the
Mhm.
experience are totally different.
Yep.
That should be totally removed. So the process to uh, prove yourself or give your identity through a wallet, so they're very similar to a typical web use case in terms of experience. That is what we believe. And the way we are enabling it, we are very closely working with a couple of constructs that we have defined.
Mhm.
So the whole market can be defined into few constructs like phone based or plugin based, and then cloud based, and then bridges. So these are all use case based constructs. And then what we are doing is we are developing SDKs which are totally agnostic of the protocol and products in general.
Mhm.
It's not like the SDK will work for wallet and it will not work for other products. So we are trying to make it super customizable, and that is the sweet spot which we have been looking is missing around.
Mhm.
Any developer can come, use a library, and then start building on top of it. So
Mhm.
that's something missing, that we are trying to push ahead. What we essentially do is, yeah, we have developed the MPC library stack for a couple of protocols, and we are also doing heavy R&D to
Mhm.
push, which we can talk later as well. And there are wrappers around for different use cases, and just trying to push other enterprises. Dominantly for now, we are working with wallet players and custodians.
Mhm.
So, as an example, I really appreciate a company like Zengo, what they have done to push MPC into mass production,
Mhm.
mass uses. So yeah, you can say we are enabling other enterprises to behave or match those criteria. So
Yep.
MPC is not a rocket science. It can be designed by companies if they have good talents, but
Yeah.
it's a slow process. Writing codes, hiring proper team, and then building the audit system. So
Yep.
we are trying to build that infra for plug and play infra for other enterprises.
Yeah, and really democratize that security technology. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Right.
It feels like almost something you believe, and I believe too, is a basic building block of security that should exist. It's would be buildable if every company had a smart, tier three set of security people on board to build it, but they don't. And especially early days, they almost certainly won't have those people. And so
Right.
what you'll be able to do is enable people to be more secure earlier, which I think is, something we all can be very, very grateful of and glad that you're working on. Um, are there any, things that you see as we move to the future, as we look to the evolution of this technology? I know, NPC is this broad term of like kind of a
Right.
bunch of different ways you can do things. You mentioned there's kind of cross chain, sorry, not cross chain, but different protocols. Like, what is the evolution of this technology that you see beyond providing that base building block of the MPC itself.
Right, right, right. I see two parts of evolution happening around. One part is hardcore modifications in the protocol itself to meet certain requirements. And another evolution is finding from a market perspective, what are the other use cases we can cater to using the similar stack. So in the first one, yeah, the whole implementation, if you track down, it started with Lindel's protocol roughly two-party setup, and then people moved to GG19, GG20, which were doing quite good. But there's a challenge, and that's a very interesting story of why patents are bad for industry. So when we started the whole signature process, the community adopted ECDSA. Why? Because it was super popular, and the other alternative, EDDSA, was kind of under patent until some years back. So that was not in the mass adoption, but EDDSA is very simple to adopt for MPC kind of construct. But researchers had to modify ECDSA, adapt, make some very heavy compute algorithms like Pallier encryption and other parts of keygen, which makes it quite heavy in terms of compute. And then they have to enable the whole stack. So that industry did saw that. Now, since EDDSA is out of patent, anybody can use. Now there's a transition happening towards it. If you see new chains, they are much more heavy onto EDDSA kind of signature. That's happening. Then there is a good amount of shift happening towards other modifications like balancing compute and communication. So in GG19 or GG20, these protocols are very heavy on compute big and very less in terms of communication requirements. But if you deploy multiple nodes and they are spread around, then compute becomes a bit of a pain. So people adopted and then made a much more beautiful protocol called DKLS, wherein compute is very little. There's no heavy algorithms which are used in GG19 and GG20. And then the communication has increased a lot. And since you have very high speed internet, you have 5G and super multiple MBs of data possible, you can afford that. And that has led to very drastic decrease in time in terms of agreeing on a signature or key generation. You can see a shift around 3 to 4 times around it.
Wow.
So you can do much more faster. And the adaptations are possible because lots of researchers are working around it. And this will keep
just
on.
From the user perspective, like how much less time would that take to complete a transaction in terms of minutes or seconds, just to give the user
Mostly, yeah, it's an order of seconds. Yeah, it's an order of seconds. So yeah, previously it was around 3 to 4. Now it will be under 1 second.
Wow, that's a big deal. I mean, that really is kind of going from, I don't know what it is, like above an internet speed to true internet speed. I know if we wait, a second for any web page to load, we've all kind of lost interest at that point. 3 to 4 seconds, you think it's broken. If it's sub-internet, then humans basically stop noticing. I think, we looked at a bunch of UX research. It says about 600 milliseconds is the magic number where people tend not to notice. The compute happens faster than your brain. So that's really exciting to hear. And to your point on usability, that really usability and the matching between Web 2 and Web 3, it starts to really enable Web 3 to meet the bar of Web 2, which is really where we all want the space to go. And so we brought our conversation out a little bit further to think about, what's the future state of crypto and security broadly? Like, what do you see that's going to come in the next, I don't know, 2, 4, 10 years?
That's a tough question.
I know. It's always like looking at the crystal ball, but I always find it fun to speculate just because it also helps us understand, like, at least what should we be looking towards in the next couple months. Although I know we'll never be right because there'll always be something surprising and exciting that happens that we never could have predicted.
Correct. Yeah. So down the line, I mean, in a couple of years, kind of a spectrum, most likely, I believe that there will be consolidation of wallets. Too many wallets around. There will be a bit of consolidation. And this won't be just a normal wallets. This will behave like a passport, which will enable plethora of applications around. Probably someone will change the name because this is a kind of a door and a passport, not actually holding your asset, and has multiple use cases. And there will be a good fusion of physical world and cyber world. And this already is happening. I mean, if you go to a country like India, You can buy tomatoes or potatoes from any road shop just using a QR code and kind of scan QR code and pay.
Hmm.
So that shift is happening, and that's also a wallet. It's a digital wallet. You have product
Yep.
like phone, Paytm, and all those things.
Hmm.
So we do see that it will become more and more ubiquitous. Does not matter whether it's Web 2 or Web 3. There might be a margin at some point of time where
Hmm.
you have a very generic wallet. And actually, countries are working on national and international levels of infrastructure. Like
Hmm.
India is working on NPCI, and so are they working with Singapore, Thailand, and other countries
Hmm.
to streamline faster payments. So we believe we are more generic framework to come up where people will be using it as a more of access to digital world
Hmm.
to log into any web page and passkeys and passwordless paradigms will shift more and towards that adoption where you have one phone which has a wallet kind of thing and you try to log into any service at all. So that's one part which we believe will pop up. We do are betting on social recovery kind of element.
Hmm.
It's a bit hard from a learning perspective for a user, but we believe probably that might go more mainstream down the line.
Hmm.
We have to study what are the problems, and we are trying to do so.
Yeah.
But we believe that will go down the line as well. There's a lots of buzz around account abstraction,
Hmm.
uh, and we believe that MPC and account abstractions are not competing technologies. They will kind of complement each other down the line.
And just really quickly
Uh,
help explain for the audience what you mean by account abstraction.
Right. So it's kind of EIP, which was written a couple of years back, but now getting much more wider adoption, where you kind of abstract the identity layer and the signature from on-chain perspective, so
Hmm.
that you can do lots of things off-chain and just dominant a part of it on-chain. And that
Okay.
kinds of has enabled many good applications. Not lots more new wallets are popping up which uses these technologies. So yeah, that's also we are betting and believing that that will go much more mainstream down the line.
Got it. Well, that makes a ton of sense. That'll be an exciting future to see, and I would love to see that convergence of all the payment system. It is pretty interesting, even in the US, to think about how far behind all the payment systems we're at, where Europe has the chip and pin system that's more secure than India as well
Mhm.
as China and much of Asia has purely digital, kind of transcending these credit card companies. And then maybe other places like Latin America, we're seeing the evolution of true crypto first. And so we're seeing
Right.
almost four generations of payment systems that are trying to coexist, and to your point, trying to find one global method of exchange. So maybe, the next time I visit Singapore, I don't have to go visit a cash machine before I can, go to the hawker market, right? That would be the
You don't need to, yeah. Even now, you don't need to.
Oh, that's true. I guess the last time I visited was so long ago. Maybe I've like aged out of it, but I'll have to come back recently and buy my next, banana prata with my mobile phone versus having to
Yeah,
stop
sure,
by the
sure.
airport
Yeah, yeah.
kiosk.
Yeah, you can buy a $1 juice from any place just using your some of the wallets which bank have.
Excellent. I'm gonna have to give that a try. And just in closing, I always like to ask, especially security person, what's one message you have for the beginners, and what's one message you have for the crypto natives?
Right. Yeah, for the beginners, we believe that the same story, your wallet is your login. Not just it is a place to store your wealth, it is also your identity, your
Mhm.
sovereignty, and your activity log. So you should learn more about it and try to be much more aware to protect it because it can be a door to your house or it can be protection of your Web3 accounts and different things. So we believe, yeah, be aware what we are using. Don't get scammed in general.
Mhm.
But there will be a push from our side as well, from enterprise side, where we'll try to lessen that literacy threshold.
Mhm.
But yeah, adopt technologies after doing some homeworks. That is super important, and particularly in crypto domain. For natives, yeah, sure. Not your keys, not your wallet. That is something which we all believe, and no matter what protocol, what wallet we are using, what grants we are trying to comply with, but that's something which we have to push. So if there is anything in the past 3 years which has taught us is that it is not a parameter of safety. Hardware wallets are great investments to have,
Mhm.
but MPC would definitely be on your cards, and therefore all your Web3 logins would be enabled on that infrastructure. So yeah, try to push in terms of innovation and build cool products around it.
I love it. Just making good security the default. That's what we always like to hear.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and also for the audience, is there any call outs that you'd like to, send them to if they want to connect with you, they want to hear more about what you're working, if they want to follow Science Laboratories, what's a place where they can go and engage and learn more about the security you're
Mhm.
providing for the industry?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we love to discuss problems, jam with anybody if they're interested in exploring decentralized authentication, whether they are beginner or they are hardcore researchers doing PhDs, have completed PhDs. We have bandwidth to accommodate and discuss with all. So we are very open to discussions. Anybody can just drop a mail. We have currently link on our website. Anybody can book a meeting, and we will be very happy to discuss more and develop together.
Oh, that's great. And just for the audience again, what's the URL they should go find your website at?
Yeah, they can go to silencelaboratories.com, which has our calendar link as well.
Awesome. Well, hey, Calendarly link on your website. That is brave. Hopefully after this cast, it won't blow up. But
No,
that's
yeah,
true open
That
spirit.
helps a lot in it kinds of lessens the bounds of communication.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. Well, hey, Jay, really appreciate you coming on the Crypto Guardians podcast. It was truly a fascinating conversation around, the cryptographic underpinnings of our authentication systems, the future of crypto, and maybe, a global system to exchange money. It's amazing how far it's already come and where it could go. So we really appreciate you joining. And I encourage everyone to go read more about Jay, his team, and his technologies at silencelaboratories.com.
Thank you very much. I believe yeah, this effort of your would be kind of enabling multiple more companies to pop up and solve some real problems, particularly in security.
Well, we can't wait to see it, and we'll have you on as this progresses. So we're excited to see and follow your
Thank you very
success,
much.
Jay. All right, take care. Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye bye.